The 2020 Democratic National Convention begins today. Due to the ongoing pandemic, the event is largely online and is expected to have a very different feel. While several council and caucus meetings are already underway, the primetime show starts at 9 p.m. Eastern with speakers such as Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, Joe Biden's former rival for the nomination, Bernie Sanders, and former First Lady Michelle Obama. Going into the convention, the Biden-Harris ticket has some encouraging poll numbers. The new CBS News Battleground Tracker poll shows Biden leads President Trump by 10 percentage points nationally, 52 to 42. And asked what they think of Kamala Harris on the ticket, 2/3 of registered Democrats say they are glad Biden picked her. Our Skylar Henry has a look at the convention night ahead.
Political conventions are a time to nominate the party's presidential candidate and fire up voters. And in that way, this year is no different.
I just feel the enthusiasm and the energy, not just about what we're against as a party, but really about a vision for America that's inclusive.
But this year, as Democrats rally behind Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, things will look a lot different. Gone are the sports arenas filled with delegates and balloons. Instead, the program is mostly virtual, with speakers joining from all 50 states and U.S. territories.
I will be speaking with the Statue of Liberty looking over my shoulder.
Senator Bernie Sanders and former First Lady Michelle Obama are tonight's headliners, with speeches expected to focus on the coronavirus pandemic, the struggling economy, and the country grappling with race and policing.
We're going to rally the American people around an agenda, and I look forward to doing that the day after Biden is elected.
Former Governor John Kasich is also scheduled to speak tonight. The Ohio Republican will try to sway GOP voters who may be wavering in the support of the president. President Trump is trying to draw attention from the DNC coverage with a trip to the battleground states of Minnesota and Wisconsin.
We're going to be working very hard. We have to. We're getting down to final crunch. We want to be there.
The Democratic Party is hitting back with a new ad in Wisconsin.
Now Trump is coming to Wisconsin.
The ad calls the visit a political stunt, and it implies the rally the president held in Tulsa, Oklahoma, helped spread the coronavirus. Skylar Henry, CBS News, Capitol Hill.
That has infected millions and killed us.
To further discuss the big day, we're joined by Briahna Joy Gray. She is the former press secretary for Bernie Sanders' 2020 presidential campaign. Briahna, welcome. Thank you so much for being with us. Briahna, I want to ask you, because obviously you worked for one of the more progressive candidates for president. So what do you make of complaints that the DNC is sidelining progressives at the convention?
Well, look, it shouldn't be any surprise that in an election year when so many people were excited about progressive candidates, when polls are showing that a number of Democrats in the high 80s support Medicare for all, where legalizing marijuana is not only an issue on the lips of the people who are participating in the biggest mass protest movement in American history, but also was an important part of the platform of many progressive candidates, that some people are unsatisfied with the fact that some people who are leading the Democratic Party are ignoring those concerns. And when you couple that with the fact that some progressive leaders who are really perceived as having the voice, if you will, of the progressives in this country, people like AOC have been given fairly limited speaking time and have had their remarks reviewed before they will broadcast, it starts to feel a little bit like the Democratic Party is doing less to court the enthusiasm of progressives than they are to try to fight for this moderate, conservative Republican defector that they've been talking about for a long time, but who hasn't ever really materialized in a meaningful way.
Is there a perception difference, though? Because even with everything you've just said, the Washington Post and others are calling the 2020 Democratic Party platform the most liberal in the party's history. I wonder if you want to respond to that, and also, how likely is it that the platform that, if Joe Biden is elected, that this platform will actually shape policy?
Yeah, the gap between the way this has been covered by the media and the way that it has been experienced on the ground and the concerns that have been raised with people who I believe are a little closer to the issues is really notable. I don't want to undermine the genuine achievements of the platform committee in pushing Joe Biden well to the left of his original position. But that doesn't mean there isn't a long way to go. And you live in a country that has been defined, as ours had for so long, by right-wing movements that pull the Republican Party rightward, and then manage to pull the Democratic Party rightward as well in an effort to close the gap. What you end up with is two corporate parties who are well to the right of where the average American is. So you have 50% of Republicans approximately who support Medicare for all. And yet the Democratic Party candidate, who has, again, 88% of his base to support that program, says he would veto it if it were to cross his desk. So at a certain point, you have to start asking, if it's politically expedient to do the progressive thing, if it's the right thing to do, why are so many of these Democratic candidates rejecting the policy platform that Americans overwhelmingly prefer? And to answer that question, I think you have to start to look at who is funding their campaigns and who are the senior advisors on their staff.
It is a very interesting question, though, and looking into it is something that I'm sure that we will continue to do. But I want to ask you about a new CBS News poll that finds more Republicans are very enthusiastic to vote this November compared to Democrats. You know, does that surprise you? And do you think the convention this week will motivate Democratic voters?
You know, it doesn't surprise me. The last time we saw a great deal of Democratic Party enthusiasm was, yes, around the candidacy of Bernie Sanders. His crowd sizes and volunteer efforts need no explanation at this point. But recall Barack Obama, who ran on this issue of change and hope, right? This idea that we could be a more perfect union and meaningfully improve this country. Now, whether or not you believe he fulfilled those promises, it was enough to galvanize an unprecedented number of voters. This time around, the main Democratic Party issue has been to say, we are going to beat Trump. And as often as Democrats are clearly saying, they've clearly been circulating a talking point of sorts that says, beating Trump is not the only issue. Just saying beating Trump is not the only issue isn't enough to explain to Democratic voters what issue is on the table that'll actually meaningfully change their lives, especially in the midst of a global health and economic pandemic.
So do you expect more clarity to come out of this convention then?
I certainly know that in Bernie Sanders' remarks tonight, he will, as always, be focused on the issues that are really close to the American people's hearts, in front of mine, especially the economic concerns that many people are dealing with right now in light of massive unemployment, historical unemployment numbers, and the fact that so many people have lost their employer-based insurance because they have lost their jobs due to COVID-19. So I expect for him to talk about Democratic plans to give $2,000 a month to average Americans and generally support people in their time of need.
So, Briahna, you do expect him to focus on economic issues then when he speaks tonight?
I think he'll also talk a great deal about this protest movement. I mean, Bernie Sanders is ultimately a protest movement candidate. He's someone who transferred to the University of Chicago as a young man after losing his parents and threw himself into the social justice movement life on campus there, founding a chapter of CORE, the Congress of Racial Equality, and protesting housing segregation on campus and surrounding the university. So he is someone who deeply empathizes with the movement that's happening on the street and is attuned to the fact that their concerns include radical reform to our criminal justice system, which has been dramatically overfunded compared to the kinds of social safety net supports that can actually prevent crime from happening in the first place, but also that the concerns of the Black Lives Matter movement include policies like canceling student debt, include Medicare for all. These are cries that are coming from the street. They're coming from voters. They're coming from millions and millions of Americans. And I think lots of folks are going to be really heartened to hear Bernie Sanders bring those concerns to the convention tonight.
Sure, it's all intertwined. All right, well, Briahna Joy Gray, thank you so much for joining us, former press secretary for the Bernie Sanders 2020 campaign. We appreciate your time.
Of course. Thank you.
Our in-depth coverage of the Democratic National Convention is just getting started. It will continue tonight and every night this week at 5 p.m. Eastern with Red and Blue. Elaine Quijano and our team of political analysts, embeds, and contributors continue coverage at 8:30 p.m., reporting on issues that matter most to voters ahead of the November election. And that is right here on CBSN.